Yo, welcome to another episode of RadioActive Recovery, where we drop the bomb on recovery and hope you catch the fallout. I want to just let you know this is presented to you by A Quarter in a Dream Productions. Yes, and I am your host, Sorry I Am 5G. Don't forget the 5. Anyway, welcome. I want to first start off by thanking my higher power, who I choose to call God, for allowing me to be in the state of mind to be able to deliver you my thoughts, my opinions, and my journey on in recovery. So today I wanted to talk about feelings and emotions. On the 27th, God willing, I will have 4 months clean and serene. Yes, 4 months clean and serene. But again, that doesn't happen without a strong network, solid people with some really serious recovery time, not just clean time, but I want to emphasize recovery time, and guiding me through life because for the past 10 years, it's been a constant roller coaster of an animalistic ride. From not showering, I used to have really high self-esteem, and to be honest, and this is to get a little off topic, but I am starting to understand why they say that sitting with self is vital to your first year of recovery, because to some degree, I feel like we all become narcissistic because we have to care less about how we feel, and throw our morals and our the things that we were taught to the wayside. So meaning, never would I, outside of active addiction, steal drugs, or steal something from a friend. But in active addiction, we compromise those morals and those lessons that we were taught growing up, because our addiction is running the show. So when I say that we all become narcissistic to some degree, I feel as though, in my opinion only, okay, this is not factual. So I do want to constantly remind you that these are my opinions. But you can always feel free to hop on the show. So, yeah, I feel like we become narcissistic because we no longer self-reflect, but we become really good at pinpointing others' emotions, how to manipulate those emotions, and also, right, how to study the paradigms that come in this box of the opposite person, right? So the person that's standing in front of us, we know how to manipulate them to like the highest degree. Like, it's frightening how much we know about the next person's emotions and how to, what's the word I'm looking for? How to manipulate those emotions, right? Like, it's frightening how good we are, how good we become at doing these things when addiction is running the show. But anyhow, back to emotions. So me personally, I grew up in a household where it was okay in front of the females in my family to cry, but the men in my family didn't really, they weren't really with that, right? Like, that shit wasn't tolerated. And, you know, they, they were men. They were the men that society said you had to be at the time that they grew up. So, with all due respect to my family, right? Like, they were awesome, right? But I didn't know what I didn't know. And, for a long time, I grew up in the projects. So, when I was outside of the house, a lot of lessons came from, the older heads. And, a lot of the time we didn't see people crying. Like, we didn't see the guys crying, right? Because that was like a really feminine emotion. And adding that to my toolbox, that made for a recipe for disaster, right? Because I am a very emotional person. I try not to be so emotional in public, but around my family, they do get to see the real me. And excuse me for the sniffling. The wife caught the flu, and yeah, so I've got the runny nose here. But because I eat well, it hasn't been affecting me that bad. So hear me out when I say your diet is everything. But I didn't have a healthy outlet um, to express embarrassment, sadness. Um, and when you feel these emotions when you're in the projects, the instant thing to do is to fight it out. So for instance, you know, there was this kid and his name was Frank White. Like I was a pretty good fighter growing up in my day, right? Like these hands is lit. And there was this one kid I could never, like, no matter how much I tried, I could never beat him up. Right? Shout out to my man Jay. Jay Nova. You know who you are. But Jay Nova was like the one of the older guys. He wasn't too much older than us, but he was just old enough for most of us to be afraid of him. And I wiped him down. Like I wiped him down. Like he almost bit my finger off. I wiped him down so bad. But and this is the homie I'm talking about, right? But like this is where we come from. We could talk like men about this. But he's the homie. He's the big homie. But I wiped him down. So like they used to call me Al Scrap, right? And there was this one kid, Frank White. I could never beat him up. No matter how many times I tried, I could never beat him up. And I remember, right, as a kid, seeing him and always being so angry. Like, oh my, like, yo, one day I'm gonna catch you and I'm gonna rock your shit. Like, I'm gonna wipe you all the way down, Boosie style. I'm gonna wipe you all the way down. But it never happened. And it wasn't until I got older and I started working on some things through a group that I take called Life Changes. Um, Shout out to the Hope Dealer. Um, where she kind of made me think about what it is that is making me angry. And in turn, it led me to understand that anger is a secondary emotion, right? Um, I guess, well, so we just looked it up in my parenting class a couple of days ago. It could be a primary emotion when dealing with like disgust or being appalled at something. But even then, I still feel like that anger is a secondary emotion. And here's why. So again, like I said, I used to see Frank White and he used to wipe me all the way down. He used to wipe me down. Pause. Wipe me all the way down. And every time I seen him, he would give me like this little smirk. Like we were cool, but like he would give me this smirk. Like, yeah, you know what happens, nigga. You getting froggy. You know what happens if you get froggy. And I would get so angry, bro. So angry, right? Angry enough to go and fight this kid, knowing I was going to lose. But why would I do that, right? One is because of this idea of what it was to be a man, right? Perpetuated by, the things I'm watching on TV, the neighborhood that I live in, and to some degree, hearing, yo, stop crying by some of the men in my family. So again, as I'm older now, right, and through this life changes group, I'm realizing, holy shit, like I have a problem with being sad, right? I have a problem with being embarrassed. I have a problem with feeling like someone has done something disloyal to me. And I never knew how to process those emotions. So what I would do is, right, is and in no way am I glorifying any of this, right? Because I'm a work in progress. Um, but I became really, really hands-on in past relationships, like almost monstrous, because I didn't know how to express jealousy. I didn't know how to express the fact that these women look so good. What were they doing with little old me, right? Because my self-esteem, ah, just just keyed in on something, right? Because I don't know if you heard me in, the beginning of the episode where I said my self-esteem used to be high. Well, that was a facade, right? Because like I wouldn't have to worry about why these women wanted me if I really had the self-esteem that I was portraying that I had. So when I had the self-esteem that I was portraying, right? Like, oh, yeah, I know who I am. I love myself and I'm fly and I'm this and I'm that and I'm God's gift to women. If I really felt that way, the moment that my girlfriend at the time would exert or would exude those same qualities, it wouldn't make me feel as though she's outshining me, or I wouldn't get jealous that like, oh, she's gonna catch the attention of another man and she's gonna leave me. Because like at the end of the day, if my self-esteem was where I was claiming it was, none of that would have mattered, right? So again, I didn't have a strong outlet. So now I'm learning that anger is a secondary emotion, and now I'm learning to process, to stop, walk away, or if I cannot walk away, to respond instead of react. And I just had a situation last night where I reacted, so I'm no perfect entity, right? Um, but again, this is trial and error, trial and error. But again, um, I'm seeing every day why they say that relationships or the lack of relationship with another addict or another person is not suggested in the first year of recovery, because right, we're still not too far removed from the person we were in active addiction, right? So like I put the drugs down, but I haven't put all of the habits down. And I can say that today, right? Because of groups like Life Changes, because of meetings. And again, when it comes to meetings, when you're in recovery, as a man, I want to let you know, please, please go and find yourself a men's group. Okay. I'm not saying that you have to go to all men's meetings. Like, no. Okay. But it is imperative for my recovery that I have a solid men's group at least once a week that I attend, right? Where I can share the way I would like to share, right? Especially if you're in a relationship, you need to find you a solid men's group, one that, you know, isn't frequented by your wife's, uh, you know, recovery posse or entourage, or, you know, um, your wife's girlfriend's boyfriend isn't at the same meeting, right? Because things can get a little sticky in recovery when it comes to, the anonymity part. Um, some people, myself included, don't have a full understanding on the traditions. So, yeah. Oh, sorry. Anyhow, yeah, this runny nose is really getting the best of me, guys. I need to make some tea. But anywho, um, so let me give you a little background on relationships and emotions for me. 2005, I got into a relationship with my son's mother. Um, this is years before my son was born. He's actually the only planned child that I have. Um, but not to take away from any of my children, because I loved them all dearly. And, the ride with his mom was rocky, to say the least. It was a very, very volatile situation. We were both, and I say we were both, very toxic for each other. But it was at this point where she went to the club a lot. And, I knew that, she partied. And on her birthday of 2007, I was looking for a way to connect with her because our communication was breaking down. Um, there was a lot of infidelity going on both sides. Um, Like there was just so much going on. So I thought the good thing to do would be to indulge in partying with her for the first time. And lo and behold, I opened Pandora's box to despair and misery. It didn't come all at once, but over time, it began to noticeably get worse and worse to the point where, like, you know, I have a customer service background. So my thing is call centers, managing call centers. That's the, that's my work history. So, I've worked for Fortune 500 companies like Spectrum in the call centers, customer relations coordinators, stuff like that. And I would literally go to work 3 days in a row and haven't slept once. Nose running like a faucet, like my homegirl Zetta would say, tired as the board of health. Like, yeah, like it was like that. But I, in my early recovery, turned a blind eye to all of the red flags. Because I thought I knew better. I come from, you know, a long line of generational curses, and I thought that I could break the curse with the same items used to make the curse, if that made any sense, right? I thought I could break this generational curse with the same items that were used to cast the curse upon my generation, right? Or my generations before me. And it was a dumb decision. It was a dumb move. Um, I've had ample opportunities to be someone in life, and an addiction chose for me. Shout out to Joyner Lucas. Did a lot of work with him in 08, 09, 2010. And, I had a really, really promising music career. I'm not going to plug my music sources in right now because we're talking recovery. But if you want, uh, hit me up on the Facebook page and I can point you to some fire. But here's my ego. But anywho, yeah, the less and less I was making the decisions, and more my addiction was making the decisions for me. Like I didn't even know when it was no longer me running the show. Before I knew it, I was just on Main Street in a pair of basketball shorts and nothing else on. Like my addiction brought me to some of my greatest despair. And I thought that I could never be hurt in my life the way my son's mother hurt me, until I got into full-fledged addiction. The moment I stuck that gancho in my arm, all bets were off. And I say that with all certainty. All bets were off. I hit the ground running. I remember taking my daughter's bike, those kind of bikes that had training wheels on them, and riding up and down Main Street on my daughter's to go purchase drugs. It was horrible. It was horrible. But those are the things that I did when I was out there. Let's talk about the emotions that brought me to recovery. Right? And if you're listening to this, if you're in early recovery, please leave a comment, right? Because the videos for these are going to be exclusively on YouTube under RadioActive Recovery. So y'all go ahead and go and hop on YouTube for the exclusive video content of this podcast. But leave your comments if you can identify. So what brought me into the halls is just isolation. Okay, this time around I didn't hit rock bottom, although I was still living in at an animalistic level. I wasn't showering. I had a shower right over there. I wasn't brushing my teeth, causing them to break, fall out, all types of craziness. Like things were just ridiculously crazy. Excuse me, 1 second. I forgot. We're on my recovery podcast. So, already. So, what brought me back? Sorry. Uh, what brought me back into the halls of recovery was one, and I've heard a lot of old timers say this, is that once you've had a little bit of recovery, your drug always got cut on it, right? You can never get high the same way. Once you got that seed planted in you, you can never get high in peace. And it's true. But I ran for about 9 months, going through a lot with my wife, while she stayed clean during this time. And yeah, so it was isolation. Drugs were very, very cheap for me, unbelievably cheap. So that was a devil's way of making sure that he kept me as long as possible. Um, I mean, so cheap you would think I was lying. So I know that you know, like there was no way I could have ran into these prices before addiction. So I knew that was a devil manipulating my life. But one morning I woke up and I could not get high anymore. I had shot holes in my legs. Xylazine was just demolishing my body. One day my wife walked in and caught me in the bathroom getting out of the shower. And when I turned around, drying off, she broke down crying. Like, what are you doing to yourself? And I I didn't know what I was doing to myself because it wasn't me making those decisions, right? Like, if you know me in real life, you know I'm a pretty intelligent person. So the intelligent side of me would say, bro, do not stick that needle inside of that wound. You can find somewhere else to go. But because it would take me too long to find another vein, I would just go in there, right? Because of my addiction, I now have a compromised immune system. Um, like, it was rough coming back in and having to face the demons and the wreckage of the things that I've done. Oh boy, it was so bad. It was so hard. You know, they say, come and get the ski tag because my road to recovery is Narcotics Anonymous. It just resonates with me, but this platform is for all recovery. But in my meetings, when they wave that white key tag and they say no shame, for me, there's a little bit of shame in it. Having to go and get that white key tag over and over and over and over again. And that has a lot to do with emotions as well, right? Because my ego played a big part in that. Like, I ain't going up there to get no key tag. I might as well just stay high because, like, you, emotions. Yeah. So, how do I deal with emotions today? Well, I have to be honest with you. At 4 months clean, I still have temper tantrums. I still have crazy thinking distortions, right? Like, and this comes from trauma, right? Like, so I was a kid in the neighborhood that, I used to love to read. I'm a self-proclaimed knowledge junkie. I'm a knowledge whore. Um, so anything and everything that I could read to gain just a little bit more knowledge on any given subject interests me. And I was that kid that the homies would be like, hey, yo, Siri, why do you sound so white when you talk? Right? Because I use words like vernacular and whatever I say, indubitably. You know what I mean? Like, I'm that guy, right? And my thinking distortions today, like, will have me in a room of people who really care for me. And in my head, I'll be like, yo, they probably think like I think I'm better than them because of the way I talk or, because of the way I articulate myself. Like, and it's probably not true. Like, some people probably do think that way, but even if they are, that has nothing to do with me. That only has something to do with them, right? So at the end of the day, these are still thinking distortions in my head, right? And I deal with them on a regular basis, walking around feeling like people are talking about me when they share. Like, and if you can identify, leave a comment underneath the how do you feel about the episode section in the podcast, because I do want to hear from you. Um, if you'd be interested in coming up and sharing your experience, strength, and hope, or what brought you to recovery, or how you're working your recovery in a proactive manner, don't hesitate to send us an email, right, with your name and your contact information to 25andDream@gmail.com. That's 25andDream@gmail.com. Because we definitely want to hear from you. Newcomer, oldcomer, pause, whoever you are, we want to hear from you, because in my literature it says one addict helping another is without parallel, right? So like my best weapon against my disease is another addict. Um and if you know, you know. That's all I gotta say about that. If you know, you know, right? Right now I'm dealing with an issue of picking up the phone. Um I've always been very self-reliant, um, outside of relationships. Um, I have mommy issues. Growing up, my mom died behind the disease of addiction, so I've leaned on relationships as if they were my mom, in essence. Um, and it gets deep. It gets deep. But this is the trauma that I'm learning to unpack with professionals. I'll repeat that again. Professionals, because you don't just want to give any information to anyone, because unfortunately humans are shitty creatures, and uh you know some humans, all humans can benefit from a 12-step program, um but some humans don't know that. Some humans don't know that they don't have to use another person's secrets against them, etc., etc. So again, I want to reiterate, the dark, deep stuff you may want to save for your sponsor or a trained professional. Okay? Only because you never want your deepest, darkest secrets being used against you or weaponized. And humans have the innate ability to weaponize pretty much anything. So, yeah, anyhow. So, what else is on the agenda today? I do this a lot. Like, I get on, I freestyle, but I honestly feel like when it comes to recovery, um, straight from the heart is the best way to reach the next addict that may be sick and still suffering. Um, because I'm still sick and I'm still suffering on a daily basis. But I tell you what, all the literature offered me, a young woman at the Wednesday night meeting told me, all the literature guarantees me is if I follow the program the way it's laid out, all I'm guaranteed is a daily reprieve from active addiction. And I'll take that, right? Is life rainbows and bubblegum? Absolutely fucking not. But I'll tell you what, my life is 100 times better than it was when I was in active addiction. I'm going through a lot of relationship issues right now, but I love my wife dearly. And I know she loves me, but we only love each other the only way we know how. And for 10 years, we were narcissistic beings. We were very sociopathic, and all that mattered was getting the next one. So, shouts out to my wife for still hanging on. And shouts out to me for still hanging on. As the newcomer, I want to let us men know that it's okay to give yourself credit for still hanging on too. All right, give yourself a pat on the back. Right, if you haven't used today, give yourself a pat on the back. If you're working to become a better man for you, for your children, for your family, but most importantly, in the eyes of God, give yourself a pat on the back. Again, I'm not perfect, right? I throw temper tantrums when I don't get things my way. when I ask of people aren't granted to me, I get very emotionally distraught. And, these are the things that happen when you're in early recovery. So again, don't be afraid to give yourself a pat on the back for hanging on. But don't forget to give your significant other a pat on the back for hanging on as well. Because and this is why they say that you know, until you have a stable foundation in recovery, you shouldn't get into relationships unless you've been in one and walked into recovery in a solid relationship. But at that point, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And both parties have to be willing and open-minded to the change. And on my behalf, I'm working on being more open-minded. Again, I still throw temper tantrums. I still say hurtful things. I'm not putting my hands on my wife today. And for me, that's a very big victory coming from where I came from. And the person that I used to be. But there's so much more work that needs to be done. But we're grateful for the things that we have in life today. And I'm grateful to share a life with the one I share a life with. I'm not going to say it's an easy life, but it's way easier than the life we shared in active addiction. So, yeah, emotions. I don't want to keep you too long rambling on. So, this has been another episode of RadioActive Recovery, the podcast where we drop the bomb on recovery and hope you catch the fallout. Give yourself credit if you stayed away from a drink or a drug today and you didn't become collateral damage. Again, I am your host, Surrey I am 5G. Don't forget the 5. And this has been A Quarter in a Dream Productions. Have a good night. Don't forget to pray. And shoot for midnight all over again. I love you all. 508 Recovery. And we're out.